All right, I'm back. Cool. I'm going to be reading today, starting this awesome book. I have no idea if it's awesome. I'm not even usually somebody who reads novels, but this is something that I've been determined to read and I've been putting off. And since we're enjoying these little streams where I read to you all, we're going to dig into this book, The Ghost Theater. So I'm hoping it's exciting. We'll start here. We'll do the insert, read the description to you all so you get an idea of what's going to be in here, and then we'll get started. This is interesting. London, 1601 or 1601. A golden city, soon to erupt in flames. Shay is a messenger girl, falconer, and fortune teller who sees the future in the patterns of birds. None such is the dark star of the city's fabled Blackfriars Theatre, where a cast of press-ganged boys perform for London's gentry. When the pair meet, Shay falls in love with the performances, and with none such himself. As their bond deepens, they create the Ghost Theater, an underground troupe that performs fantastical plays in the city's hidden corners. As their fame grows, the troupe fans the flames of rebellion among the city's outcasts, and the lovers are drawn into the dark web of the Elizabethan court. Embattled with the plague on the rise throughout the country, the queen seeks a reading from Shay, a moment that unleashes chaos not only in Shay's life, but across the whole of England too. Oh my. A fever dream full of prophecy and anarchy, gutter rats and bird gods, Matt Osman's The Ghost Theater is a wild ride from the rooftops of Elizabethan London to its dark underbelly, and a luminous meditation on double lives and fluid identities, and the bewitching, transformative nature of art and power, with a bittersweet love affair at its heart. Set amid the vividly rendered England of Osman's imagination and written in rich, seductive prose, The Ghost Theater will have readers under its spell from the very first page. Well, doesn't that sound nice? And then in the back here, they have a nice picture of Matt. He's a very handsome chap, I must say. He's like a giant with beanstalk sort of gentleman. And yeah, very simple bio. He is a musician. Matt Osman is a musician, songwriter, bassist, and founding member of the British band Suede, Terry's favorite band. That's why we're reading this book, okay? I gotta read the bassist's book, you know? I gotta be a good fan. His writing about art and travel has appeared in The Guardian and The Independent, The Observer, and more. He is the author of the novel The Ruins, and he lives in the UK. I've been meaning to get a copy of The Ruins as well. I think it's in my Amazon wish list. Actually, I found like a Chinese copy in there too that I was looking at, but I have not gotten around to that. But The Ghost Theater was hyped pretty big when it was released. Consequently, his younger brother has become even more famous than him. But I don't really know who he is because I'm American, not British. Hello, Rome 13, and hello, Big Blank Master War Chief. You've been giving me guff today, wondering if I know you at all. If you're some kind of troll account for somebody I already know, or if you're just some new person coming for me. What is this? Is this a new picture, Rome? Well, I like it. Nice to see you here. So yeah, get cozy. We're going to read. Guff is so demure. Very demure, very mindful, right? You're neutral? Well, awesome. Welcome to the chat. And Matt, if you're watching, which I know you are, you know, you are adored. And hopefully the discussion about your book does not offend you in any way. Because we all know Matt's going to be watching this. Probably on catch up, though. I'm sure he's sleeping now. Hi, Kevin McAllister. Are you okay? Are you home alone? Are you safe? Your parents there? For Anissa, Act 1, London, 1601. If the men had brought dogs rather than their fancy-trained wolves, then Shay would be dead by now. Dogs could have been let off the leash, and they'd have made short work of her up here on the roofs. Wolves, though, were worth a sovereign, and that was too rich a prize to be risked on a flapper like her. Gilmer had begun chasing her back in Eastcheap, where it was easy enough to leap from rooftop to rooftop. The roads were barely wide enough for a cart to pass through, and the houses leant towards one another like plants seeking the sun. There Shay had stepped between the roofs as easily as stepping across a stream, but the men drove her westwards. At first she relished this. West London roofs were tile rather than daub, and she worried less about crashing through into the rooms below, but they forced her towards grander streets wide enough for carriages. The jumps were becoming hard work. Her legs throbbed with the effort. She threw herself across St. Peter's Hill and barely made it. Her leading foot caught the edge of the thatch and it was only momentum that carried her body on to flatten against the slope of the roof. Ooh. Grit bit her hands and knees. She scrambled around the building's edge, leaning into its slope, and cursed the loss of rhythm. Below her, 3 stories down, the rest of Gilmer's men careered around the street. She flung herself across a short gap between domed roofs and scampered across a rare glass skylight. A glimpse of faces turning up to watch her feet, and then she slid down a bank of mossy tiles onto the house's flat border. A 10-foot gap gaped in front of her. She scanned the roof for a ladder to bridge the space. Nothing. Gilmore was close now. His whistles came more frequently, and when she turned, she could see the wolves straining against their leashes, snouts tasting the air in front of them. You made your family disappear, oh dear. She turned back along the gutter, looking for another path. The houses down by the Thames were bunched closer together again, so she edged along the peak of the roof and then threw herself across a thin alley. Her landing place was a row of older houses with boards on top, and the wood bowed under her weight. If it collapsed, then she'd break a leg or worse. The jumps were manageable here, but now she was running at an angle to Gilmore, and he was closing in. For the first time, she could hear the panting of the wolves and the sound of his feet clattering over the boards. At this rate, he could afford to wait until the dead end of the river. Legs complaining, Shay leapt from the board houses onto a sturdier roof. She came down with a crash, sending a flock of pigeons skywards in a soft explosion of feathers. They spread like a fountain, and she repeated the catechism under her breath. The gods are birds, and the birds are gods. She let its cadence guide her feet. The gods, step, are birds, step, and the birds, step, are gods. Leap. Gilmore to the right, the river to the left, and the end of the city ahead. She spun around. A church spire, a flash of grass, the turrets of a gate. She turned east towards a plain of thatched roofs and ran harder. Gilmore was near enough that she heard his commands to the wolves. Come by, there's my girl. He let out a long whistle, and it was instantly echoed from the streets below. Each step tore strips of breath from her body. The thatch was ragged, and twice she caught her foot under a loose section. Straw ends burned her hands. She looked for landmarks. St. Paul's Church rose from the carpet of the city, and behind it, obscured by smoke, sat the old bell tower. No good to her now, either of them. She looked right and saw a still figure sitting on a flat roof with a hand shielding its eyes. For a second the figure watched, then it raised a hand, stood, and began to run parallel to her. The birds are leap, gods. Nearly 8 feet, that one, arms thrown out to catch the central ridge of thatch and pull her up and over. She slid down the other side and narrowly avoided going over the edge. Gravel fell to the street below. The figure now ran on a course that would intercept her. Friend or foe, no way of knowing. Then a boy's voice sounded across the rooftops. Go right for 3 houses, then head for the spire. She hauled herself upright and stepped over the thinnest of alleyways. 30 feet below, a river of noise pulsed. She took off, not daring to look back, and made for a long house with peaked top that would surely be too steep for the dogs. That gained some precious moments. She scuttled across the slope, keeping one eye on her footing and one on the boy. He was 20 feet away, but closing in. Just a lad with hair to his shoulders, dressed in scarlet and black. Once he was level with her, he kept a street's width between them. 3 jumps ahead, there's a roof with a smoking chimney. Stop there and then do as I do. Shay tried to nod, but the pain in her lungs wiped her strength away. 3 leaps, gods, birds, gods, and they converged on a square of roof barely large enough to hold the pair of them. A rickety chimney puffed fragrant white smoke, a sweet smell, almost sickly. The boy lay on his front and reached over the side. Shay heard a click and a creak of wood. Watch me. There was no urgency to his voice. Shay lay down and looked over the edge. They were higher up than she expected, and the street below was too far for any noise. A drop of sweat fell from her brow and spun lazily downwards. Look, the boy squatted, held onto the edge of the roof, and then rolled over while still grasping the rim. His body somersaulted and then disappeared. Shay held her breath, waiting for the crash. Now you, his voice was close. She edged out further. A window stood open underneath the lip of the roof. He'd flipped over and inside the tower in one movement. His face peered up. Quick, don't think about it. Frantic whistles behind her and the wolves howling with anticipation. She grabbed the edge and threw herself forward. The world spun as the weight strained against her aching shoulders, and she began to fall back into the window. But then her left leg slammed into the frame and her hand slipped. For a second she dangled there by one arm, legs flailing for some kind of purchase, before he grabbed her around the waist and pulled. Her back and arms scraped hard against the window frame, and she fell backwards into the building. Shay wanted to lie there for a moment, but the boy set off down a spiral staircase so tiny that the steps were no larger than roof tiles. He jammed his hands against the walls and half slid, half fell down the spiral. She followed as fast as she dared, breathless and dizzy, with her vision blurring. The stairs seemed to go on forever, but just as the nausea was making her stumble, his footsteps stopped ahead of her. She collapsed to her knees in a larger room with 2 doorways and an open serving hatch in the wall. An enormous woman was wedged into a chair by the door, stroking something in her lap. The boy knelt at her side and talked quickly into her ear. Then the 2 of them looked over at her, and Shay was about to thank them when she heard the sound of splintering wood from above. The boy said something more to the giant woman, kissed her gently on the ear, and then pulled the serving hatch open. It was a small lift, no bigger than a chest of drawers. Inside, he said. Shay placed her hands on the frame. I can't. It's too small. The fat woman laughed at that. Little scrap of a rag like you? It's your choice. You could take your chances with whoever's up there instead. The splintering stopped. and the ensuing silence was more frightening than the noise had been. Shay lifted a knee into the hatch and then pulled one shoulder and her head inside. She smelt cooked meat and the same sickly smoke from the chimney. The box creaked under her weight, and hands grasped her waist. The boy lifted up the rest of her body and shoved, jamming her head against the wall. She looked out sideways at his hands in the murk of the room, and she now realized the long silver machete that lay in the woman's lap. Don't move and don't touch anything when you get down there. The box lurched and scraped against the wall as it descended. She was wedged in tight when the box stammered to a stop. She had to push with her legs to get out, and she fell awkwardly onto the floor. A moment to catch her breath. She was in another room, more shadowy than upstairs and oily with smoke. The serving lift disappeared back up with a jerk, and the room echoed to a low hubbub of voices that hadn't stopped upon her arrival. How interesting. You were going to Zumba, but Terry went live? Oh my, good for you. An enormous woman. Am I trolling my own chat? Novel. You like suede? Yeah, Metal Mickey's my jam. Hello, Zenny. Terry. Terry, your beautiful porcelain skin. Why does low culture go viral? I mean, honey, the world is a ghetto. Haven't you figured that out yet, Tomas? Yeah, that, I don't know. The demure thing, it is a bit, I'm not on TikTok. I had a friend send me one of the guy's clips from Instagram, and it was like well past it already having been viral. So, Terry, I refuse. I know, Tomas. And that's what I admire so much about you. How is my connection? It looks like my Wi-Fi is giving me some guff. I know. Tomas came down from Mount Olympus. Okay, are you all enjoying the novel? Let's continue. Okay. She pulled herself up and found a man standing over her, older and dressed in clothes that had been expensive once. He leant down and took her by the chin, turning her face towards the candles. Their eyes met for a moment, and then he let go and smiled. Well, I definitely didn't order that. Laughter came from over his shoulder as he walked back into the room. The serving lift juddered back into place once more, and the boy slid gracefully out, landing on his feet. He tutted and brushed himself down, and then took Shay's hand and guided her into the shadows. The room was divided up into small cabins, each lit by a single candle. Men smoked and slept, one to a booth, and the air was muddied with thick haze. The boy found them an empty booth. He pulled over some cushions and regarded her with interest. Shay was unused. Goodness. Look at me struggle willfully with this word. And yeah, it's unused to such close scrutiny. She worked hard on being unmemorable, her clothes, her manner, her voice. She'd learned to bounce off the surface of people, to slide between the rough edges of life, but he didn't look away. She knew what he'd be thinking. What is this? She'd lost her cap somewhere, so her 2 wings of hair stuck up in tufts around her tattoo lines, and there were cuts on her neck and shoulders. Her breasts were taped down, and she wore sailor's culottes and buckle shoes. She'd heard all the questions. Are you a boy or a girl? What happened to your hair? Why are you dressed for the poorhouse? So she set her face as hard as she could manage, her heart still racing, and tried to stop her legs trembling. The boy kept examining her and then shook his head as if to dislodge something. So rude of me. He reached out a hand, like an adult. Shay, she kept her voice as flat as possible, deepened it a little. The act was almost unconscious now. He clasped his other hand over hers. Well, hello, Shay. I'm Lucifer, the very devil come to earth. Wow. All right. How interesting. How interesting. All right, chapter 2. It was an hour before they dared venture back above ground, out blinking to an autumn sky so thinly blue that it might shatter if you threw a stone. It was market day, and clear skies on market days meant crowds. The city would be full of gate people up for the day, gawping and hesitating and examining every head on the new gate spikes. Oh yeah, they used to put people's heads on spikes. Goodness. Shay preferred the dull days when only Londoners were about and the crowds flowed like birds. The pair walked under the awnings of West Cheap Market, keeping to the edges in case any of Gilmore's men were still around. The boy walked with an odd, shuffling step, trying to slow his pace to match Shay's struggle through the throng. He was tall enough that he could have rested the point of his chin on the stubble of her scalp, and those extra inches were like a second sight when Cheapside was this busy. He sidestepped and knights moved, ducked under eaves, scaled barrels, and pulled Shay diagonally across 4 lanes of traffic. At Shay's eye level, London was a kaleidoscopic barrage. The sharp shoulders of prentices and a flash of stacked cherries on a cart, horses' breath at her neck. Of course, she felt hands on her, too. They mostly guided her out of the path of the more hurried walkers. But once she felt the briefest grab of buttock, so quick as to be unattributable, and once the gentle but unmistakable touch of a practiced hand scanning her waistband for a purse. She unsheathed her knife with a snick, and the hand withdrew. St. Nicholas Shambles was so crowded that the jam of people lifted her off the ground, and her feet didn't touch earth for nearly 10 feet. Fine by her. A constant acrid stream of animal piss ran down the center of the street, racing for the Thames. As she tilted her head back for some fresher air, Shay caught segments of sky between the shoulders and stalls. It looked blank and welcoming amid the dung and the muddied sleeves and the rotten fruit and the sweat and shouts. They scuttled through a tavern on Old Change, so slender that she brushed both sides with her outstretched fingertips, then ducked out the back into an alleyway. That first quarter hour, Shay only caught the boy in snatches, the prow of his chin pushing through the crowd, the dance step of his fussy black velvet shoes. But as he blocked her path with an outstretched arm to allow an emptying of chamber pots above them, she could see him properly. He was tall, or at least tall to Shay, and slender too, slope-shouldered and thin-waisted, topped with a nest of curls that ran from treacle at their roots to the blonde of roof straw at the tips. A face and body where everything came to a point. His nose was an arrow towards his attention. Thin brows and elbows like scissors. They weren't the fine features of an aristocrat, but he was still pale and unblemished, a city boy. His outfit confused her. He wore an unstarched ruff, deliberately, so it appeared, which hung down as if he were on the way to his laundress. A leather tunic, well made but worn at the elbows and seams, decorated with 100 tiny diamond-shaped slashes, so that the shirt below could be pulled through. Shay had seen the look before on the plumed and perfumed Italians who stalked St. Paul's Walk of a Sunday, but she'd never seen it done with such stylized extremity. His back looked like a flotilla of sailing boats on a black sea. His hose and knife sheath were matching dull scarlet, and his blade had a silvered hilt. The hose looked overly feminine on him, especially atop those button-lined velvet shoes. Who could he be? A down-on-his-luck gentleman's son, forced into hand-me-downs? A gang leader longer on funds than taste? She couldn't exactly place him, a fact which frustrated and excited her in equal measure. A final spout of water poured from overhead, and as he lowered his arm, Shay said, "I like your jacket." I'm glad the chat is enjoying this. Your reactions are quite delightful. Okay. He looked down as if seeing it for the first time, and Shay liked him a little less. Those tufts of shirt alone that he'd spent at least a quarter hour on his look. He plucked a triangle of snowy linen to a peak and said, "You know the Earl of Anglesey? He died in it." He poked a finger through a slit in the side and waggled it at Shay, lanced right through like a pig on a spit. There's another hole in the back. "Oh, I'm sorry," said Shay. "Was he a relative?" The boy snorted with pleasure. "Ha, Lord, no." The Earl left 3 outfits to the theater. His voice deepened. "To be worn solely on the occasion of playing royalty." He snorted again. In his dreams, this would do for a minor nobleman at best. We're not supposed to wear them off stage, but I do feel that I should be an advertisement for the place. The theater, then, she should have guessed, young, well-dressed, and loafing on a workday. He was a Blackfriars boy. Even back in the marshes, where London was little more than a rumor, Shay had heard of them through school friends who followed the boy actors with a dreamy obsessiveness. The idea of lads little older than themselves being household names before they could shave, performing better than the highest of society, was a glorious, freeing aberration. No matter that the flapper girls were too young and too poor to see them perform, the boldest saved up for the London ferry and hung around the stage door to badger playgoers with questions. They learnt the whole troupe by name, knew their likes and dislikes, devoured their histories. It was only once Shay started working in London that she'd heard other whispered stories about the troupe. Plays so satiric that they had to be performed by invitation only, and secret liaisons with noblemen and noble women. He slowed the pace. Why were they chasing you back then? Shay was surprised that hadn't been his first question. You know the bird shop on St. Lawrence Lane? The man with the wolves is its owner, Gilmore. And I just set all his birds free. She waited a beat. Again. She saw it unfold one more time, her fish hook lowering like a well bucket through the gap she'd made in the shop's ceiling, lowering 3 times, each a little nearer to the handle of the birdcage. The tink of the hook against metal, lost among the caws of 30 birds. The shop boys were focused on a woman customer whose sable alone said that she could buy the entire shop with the contents of her purse. Shay's target was the hatch on the top of the biggest cage. One more time the hook crooked around its handle, and this time it caught. She spooled the line in and watched the hatch. It rose vertically and then fell, striking the top of the cage with a noise like dropped cutlery. The shop boys looked around. The woman looked around. But the birds didn't move until Shay tugged so hard that the wire dug into her fingers. The hook bent under the cage's weight, and as it rocked, the birds panicked. There was a flash of scarlet wing, almost too fast for human eyes, and then the warbles of songbirds churned to shrieks of alarm. The cage seesawed back and hit the table with a shudder. The first escapee was a lovebird, downy and sunset colored, up out of the hatch and through the shop front like it was sucked on a tide. There was a moment of balance as the cage settled and the shop boy swiveled. Then, with a card shuffle sound, the rest of the birds streamed from the cage. Shay was back out onto the roof in an instant. The birds, unnerved by their sudden gaping liberty, rose in a waterspout of noise and color, and then on some unknown signal spread out, throwing scraps of bright living silk out into the sky. The boy kicked at the floor and grinned as if he'd been the one who'd done it. He craned his neck to look at the sky. "How many times have you done that?" "4. The first 2 were easy. Back then she just walked in, undone the cage and at the front and walked out. You'll need a disguise then. Let me get you something from the theater." Something must have shown on her face because he laughed. "We're not as black as we're painted, I promise. The owner's not there today, so you're not going to get press-ganged." She tried to laugh. "I thought if the devil offered you a gift, then you were supposed to turn it down." He raised an eyebrow and she said, "I still don't know your name, Lucifer." "Ah, of course. I'm none such." He shook her hand again, and then he was off without waiting to see if she was following, sidestepping down a body-wide alleyway between houses into a shop selling candle ends, and out through the back door into a courtyard full of horses still steaming from their morning's work. Somehow they were back on Cheapside. Shay loved Cheapside, loved it more than any other place in London. The world was laid out here like a living map. Silks from India were stacked in riotous pyramids, rough edges hinting at the jungle within. Dutch merchants wore heavy buckled hats over heavy troubled faces and squatted behind a forest of tulips. Several oranges were labeled hopefully, Morisco, so that buyers' patriotism wouldn't be questioned. Reynolds' spice shop warmed one whole side of the street with a burnt throat-catching aroma, and she took Nonsuch's arm and slowed him, nose to the air with her eyes closed. Cinnamon, cayenne, cloves, and pepper. You taste it? India, Panama, Madeira, on your tongue for free. He barked a quick laugh, but still he stood with his mouth ajar. Wiltshire ham, Anglia wool, Cornish tin. In 10 minutes walking, they heard 5 languages, 20 accents. Even the swallows overhead had traveled thousands of miles to get here. In Shay's view of the world, London was the bullseye at the center of an archery target, and Cheapside was a miraculous once-in-a-lifetime dead center shot. It's like the never-ending book of that English twat. Isn't Mina nice? Isn't she a nice lady? Tomas liked that story. How nice. Thank you, Tomas. I enjoyed learning more about Robert Webb. What is going on in this chat, you guys? Goodness. Talking about crawfish, talking about Scooby-Doo. We're reading The Ghost Theater. My light keeps moving. I swear. Maybe if I can... No, I can't really... Maybe I can move this. One moment, you guys. I'm going to mess with this. Mana is your favorite? I mean, that's fine. You can have Mana be your favorite. I'm not going to be offended by that. I don't take anything she says personally. Okay, so let's see if I can move this cord around like this. Maybe that will stop it from moving. Matthew, don't try to be frightening. It wasn't anything of this sort. There are none of such creatures around me at all. Thank you. Okay, let's get. They walked the back streets for a while, and none such wound stories around their route. It was convulsive storytelling, each tale more outrageous than the last. He flung his arms wide or hunched over like a goblin when performing some evil character. Outside a puppet show, he copied the marionettes, making Shay laugh with the jerky dance. But he was a listener, too. He listened with his whole body, often stopping, blocking traffic to scan her face urgently or put his hand on her shoulders. That brought a heat to her face. She prized her anonymity above everything, and usually such attention would have felt invasive. But the boy had an openness that was infectious. He told her, unprompted as far as Shay could tell, about a countess's daughter who paid him $1 an hour to teach her street talk. How he'd ridden the rapids between the arches of London Bridge on a log, throwing up before and after. Shay's stories were smaller, but he watched her face intently as she spent every interesting part of her father and his snow-white swan boat, her rooftop messengering, and falcon taming, the fortune-telling and card-reading. It wasn't your first time up there on the roofs, then? He asked. God, no, I pretty much live up there. I can cross London faster than any messenger in the city, but I love the rooftops anyway. My father worked up high in dovecotes and places like that, so I got a taste for it. Snatches of memory floated down, her father's glove so large that she could fit 2 fingers in each hole, gripped by the falcon's knotty claws. Him facing the wind with his mouth half open, tasting it, a smile creeping across his face every time. Her favorite moment was the unhooding of the falcon, and the way that the bird's eyes were instantly, unblinkingly alive, the unsheathing of a knife. The moment the falcon took off, your hand, relieved of its weight, followed. It leapt after the bird as if the updraft of wings might pull you along behind it. Shay would stand on tiptoe, trying to keep the connection between her and the falcon for as long as possible. None such nodded. I sit on the theater roof most days, a pipe and a book, and all the secret conversations of the street rising up to you, he mimed, picking an apple. They walked south towards the smell of river, and the streets grew more crowded again. Gate people everywhere, up from that sprawling second London that squatted around its walls. Makeshift villages that huddled in as if cold stone might give off warmth. The quarter bell rang. Shit, said Nonsuch. I still have chores. He dragged her across a furious stream of farmers' carts, down into a shaded side street where he rapped at a high door. After the shortest of pauses, it was thrown open, and a man in an apron, so drenched in blood that Shay could smell it, sweet and rotten, grinned down at them. If it isn't Beelzebub himself, wait. He closed the door carefully, and shouts came from within, then a deeper, ominous chopping sound. The man reappeared with a bucket and a sack that was stained and damped at its base. Nonsuch took it and held it carefully away from his body. It's definitely lamb. The cow's was too thick. The man laughed. Slit its throat myself. He handed the bucket to Shay. A stick protruded from a few inches of viscous blood. Ugh. Nonsuch said, keep stirring as we walk. If it hardens, there'll be hell to pay. Shay must have looked stricken because he added, "For me, not you." She swirled the stick in time with their footsteps. The bucket was heavier than it looked, and flies already bombarded its surface. "What's in the sack? I hope it's sheep intestines." He switched hands and flexed the one that had been holding the bag. "For a fight scene tonight. The silk merchant wears them inside his tunic. I spring." He lurched forward and thrust out an imaginary sword. "I slice, and out they come. Except last week they only had cow's intestines. Too big. The damn thing burst before I even had my sword arm up. It looked like he was giving birth." "And the blood?" "For later on. You fill a pig's bladder and stitch it across the top. Tuck it under here." He gestured to his armpit. "And when you're hit, you squeeze." He wore a rueful grin. "We're still late," he said. "I swear there are more of these hayseeds every day. How do you feel about a little emergency, at least until Blackfriars?" When Shay looked quizzical, he reached into the bucket and smeared a thick let of blood across his neck. Shay smelt iron and shit. Oh, it sounds so disgusting. He squeezed out into the street and yelled, "Oh God, bastard cutthroats," and collapsed backwards into Shay's arms. With his face upside down, he looked younger still, and he winked up at her. The crowds parted at the noise, and a shiver of excitement ran ahead of them. None such spluttered and gurgled in her arms, looking like a dead weight, but somehow his legs were helping propel them. The fiction percolated through her. "Out of the way, damn you," she shouted, and her voice sounded odd, hard. "Let us through." People jammed themselves against walls and under awnings, faces expectant with looks that said, "Oh, thank God it's not me, it's some other poor sod." And Shay was swept along by their relief. "Left here," none such whispered between death throes. And when they were in the quiet of an alley, he straightened up and wiped his face clean. He pulled Shay close. She couldn't imagine what for. Their faces were inches from each other. "Do I look all right? My public awaits." His voice was back to its drawl. She wiped a thumbprint of dried blood from his temple and nodded, a sweep of eyes across her face. "And you? Do I introduce you as boy or girl?" The question was asked more casually than anyone had managed it before. "Boy here in London. It's for work. It's illegal for girls to run messages, see?" She saw no reason to go into it further. He laughed at that. "Fine. You don't have to tell me about the roles we play." How progressive. Our main female character is a cross-dresser. Isn't that incredible, guys? University Challenge. I have watched University Challenge. I mean, only like in passing, like I looked it up because of the Young Ones. They did a parody of University Challenge where they played Footlights Oxbridge, and they had Stephen Fry and Emma Thompson and Ben Elton. I think Hugh Laurie as well were like the posh students, and then the kids in the Young Ones' house were playing against them. Quite funny. You love these books. I don't read novels mostly. I don't normally read novels. This is probably the first novel I've read in a couple of years, maybe even longer than that. Not The Kids in the Hall, The Young Ones. You like my hair today? Thank you. It's not really a bun, it's just pinned up a little bit. But thank you. I think let's go into another chapter. I look wonderful today. Thank you, Tomas. You're sweet. I do look pretty nice today. I did have fun. I went out briefly to get a boba tea, and I've got wearing some color. It's fun. My hair is a rerun. Well, I go. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to even say to that, Court. I mean, my hair is a rerun. It's slightly different than it was last time. You like the hair hat better. You want it all up. You don't like it down. Dreadlocks. Indeed, I will not ever do dreadlocks. God. Thank you, Big Nuts Master War Chief. Well, let's go into chapter 3. The funny thing is, too, just thinking about the band Suede. And these characters, they're both like androgynous, artsy, like unusual types. I had I should do pigtails. I have done pigtails. I will do them again when I wish. I had a perm once as well. It smelled awful. I will never perm my hair again. I mean, I don't really need to perm my hair. It's like naturally wavy. It has a natural curl to it. I don't know what I was thinking. I just basically ruined my hair. Okay. But let's continue. Let's continue. I don't know, Mina. It's hard to please the public, What can you do? Okay, chapter 3. The cobbles outside the theater had been washed clean, leaving a semicircle of sheen protruding out into the murk of the street. Bystanders huddled in small groups, pointedly ignoring one another. Serving girls mainly, and a couple of whores out early. Even a trio of gentlewomen standing primly to one side with their neat little feet on pristine squares of handkerchief. None such pulled his hat down over his eyes, but that, if anything, drew more attention to him. A ripple of calls went up. None such, none such. What are you playing today? Any spares? Any backstage? They talked over Shay's head as if she wasn't there. He held up a hand and said, "Not now. Apologies. I'm late for rehearsal." And as he and Shay ducked into the dark of the theater, there was an audible rush of disappointment from outside. "Sorry about that. It's a peril of the profession. It's crazy that they arrive here so early." He didn't look particularly disappointed, and Shay asked, "Why doesn't the theater have a back entrance then?" For the first time since they met, she saw embarrassment in him. He said, "Well, I suppose there is one, actually." The double doors cut off the street's racket so completely that inside felt like a church, and Shay let herself believe that his entrance might have been purely to impress her. A smell of sandalwood and incense spiced the air. Blackened candelabras hung from the ceiling, yards above her, but they were so sparse with candles that the room was as shadowy as a confessional. None such guided her deeper into the auditorium, and the shape of the place coalesced. 2 tiers of boxes lining a room, cambered in such a way that every seat had a view. A crack of light from the rear illuminated a high stage where a knot of boys recited lines. Speaking over one another, a desultory sword fight was taking place in the aisle, and the weapons rang like bells. Real swords, Shay noted. None such pulled her into the grimy light with a finger on his lips, and the sword fighters stopped. He beckoned one over. "Where's Evans?" he asked. "He's out counting his money. He'll be a while." The boy who replied was mousy and small-featured. His armor was made of thick paper, and up close, Shay could see rips forming in the tighter pieces. He placed the tip of his sword onto his shoe and rotated it, watching Shay. Nonesuch said, "Call me if he arrives," and led Shay up onto the stage. The boy called after him, "Oh, Mr. Lucifer?" Nonesuch turned with a grin, and the boy said, "No devilry tonight, I'm afraid. Special request from some pal of Evans. You're giving us your Cleopatra, darling." Nonesuch stopped dead. "Cleopatra? Really? We're on in 2 hours, and I haven't played it since the spring. A little warning would have helped. Don't blame the messenger. The others are learning their lines as we speak." Nonesuch grabbed another boy and unloaded the sack and bucket onto him. He opened a shoulder-high door at the back of the stage and ushered Shay through. It was a tiny, tiring room, taller than it was wide, and stained the dark brown of ale dregs. It was darker still than the auditorium, and two boys sat face to face in the corner, trying out lines on each other. Nonesuch lit candles in the wall holders either side of a silvered mirror and talked under his breath. "Cleopatra, I bet the costume smells like a midden, and that makeup. You'll stay, won't you?" The last was aimed at Shay, and she found herself nodding yes without knowing why. She sat by a second mirror and watched him get ready. Nonesuch scooped 2 fingers of a thick paste the color of plums from a tub and began to smear it across his face. There were more colors, too. A bright red for his mouth and eyes, daubed so sloppily that his features broke their banks, and a convalescent yellow for his cheekbones and brows. He recited as he worked, so quietly that Shay had to watch his lips to catch the words. "Oh, may these eyelids never close again, till with my sword I have that conjurer slain." His face tightened in the candlelight. Even before the makeup, his features looked ornamental, arches of eyebrow and philtrum, sharp-angled nose and cheekbones. He had skin the deep white of new mushrooms, gentleman's skin. Shay knew that some Blackfriars boys were sons of the gentry, press-ganged, bribed, or plain kidnapped. In certain well-to-do streets, the sight of the theater's owner's black-plumed horses elicited the same terror that bailiffs did where she grew up. Nonesuch spoke well, dressed better, and his hands looked like they'd never seen hard work. But Shay couldn't quite see him as a gentleman's son. There was a preparedness for danger about him that she had never seen in anyone of comfortable means. The smallness of the room and the mirrors meant it was hard for Shay to look elsewhere as Nonesuch undressed. Oh my. Oh my. What are you all getting up to in the chat? I look up and what is this? I wonder what's going to happen. So they have a romance budding here. It's very clear that they're going to have some kind of romance, these two. Okay, so she's watching him get naked. All right. He seemed unworried by her presence anyway. She got an impression of tautness, white skin and muscles like tree roots, flat-stomached and trim. He dressed in black and gold, black hose, a black gown, and gold bands at his temples, wrists, and ankles. In the mirror, his body disappeared into the gloom, while his face shone. There was a new suppleness to him. The boys in the corner dropped to their knees and prayed with hands on each other's shoulders. Nonesuch plucked off one lad's cap at the tip of his sword and lowered it onto Shay's head without a word. Flowers were delivered silently and ignored. A Moor polished a trumpet in the mirror, turning it this way and that to catch the light, and Nonsuch gave a silent bow. He was, Shay realized with a prickling of pleasure, the only adult she'd seen backstage. When the stage door opened again, it let in a bubble of noise and the sword-fighting boy from before. He said, "Nonsuch, it's almost time. I think we'll sell out again. Westland and Rodrigo are about to come backstage and say hello." So they've even got a black in here. Isn't that crazy? This is so progressive. Like the queerness, the the diversity. I mean, dang. Zenny's writing fan fiction about the Bond boys. Oh, Lord. A Moor, and they called him a Moor. Isn't that fun? Remember when the blacks used to be called Moors? Nonsuch took a long look at himself in the mirror and sighed. Fucking vultures. Why can't they wait until afterwards like all the other bloodsuckers? Don't complain, they brought wealthy friends. Anyway, sharp eyes, blunt knives. Nonsuch repeated the phrase and said, "Wait, Trestle, this is my friend Shay. Where can he watch from?" Shay hadn't asked to stay for the performance. Trestle looked her over with the questioning gaze they all gave each other 100 times a day. The look that asked, "Where are you from, and where are you allowed to go?" He was slight and bony with Piscean eyes and unruly hair. "Every good seat is taken, I'm afraid, even on the stage. You might have to listen from here." He was about to leave when he said, "I don't suppose you can read." Pride battled with her desire for anonymity. "I can read." His interest pricked. "You can read properly? You could read this?" He passed over a sheath of loosely bound pages, and Shay flicked through. Hand-inked lines and stage directions with marks all over in pencil. She chose a page at random. "The stars align on paths eccentric. Our fates are tugged like drunken horse carts." Trestle laughed. "Well, that sounds like the kind of bollocks I have to hear every night. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we have a prompter, like an actual theater." "Oh, they're putting her to work." Talking about chat is the best part of people calling, yet they act like snowflakes. Indeed. Indeed. And where was I? A bell rang out and Trestle hurried her down the steps, and through the curtains before she had time to say no. Even walking across the stage made her feel desperately conspicuous. The room in front of them sparkled, and the air of wealth was unmistakable. It was in the glint of rings and the flash of lace. People looked lit from within. A lady sat flanked by 2 male servants, one of whom cracked walnuts for her. A whore in whiteface glinted everywhere, pearls in her hair, pearls at her ears. Shay tried to block out the sight of feathers and hats, but they were everywhere. It was all too much, like being drunk. She concentrated on her feet as she walked, and her shadows raced across the stage. There must have been 1,000 candles around the theater, each reflected in the gleam of gold and leather and diamond and mirror. Candles were strung on wires across the ceilings in convoluted patterns, too, and she recognized a couple of the shapes. The plow, Orion's belt. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? I mean, I imagine seeing the theater at that time would have been a remarkable experience, like just stunning, and everything to be lit by candlelight. I mean, how mesmerizing it must have been, truly. And to get all done up to go into that too. You know, I would have been done up real good. Okay. A long raised slit bisected in front of the stage, and a face gazed out from inside. Trestle told her, "Down you go," and Shay slid her legs through the slit until hands twisted her around. It was tight in there. A low bench, racks of props and effects, and a pale, long-faced girl. She was dressed in a black bodysuit with a high neck, giving her the appearance of a cameo in a locket. "What are you, not a prompter?" Shay tried to get comfortable. "Yes, well, apparently. I'm Shay. I've been roped into this. I've never done it before." "Of course you haven't. Typical." "Never mind. You're better than nothing." Her frown suggested that might not be the case. "I've been doing both for weeks. I'm Alouette, lights and props. I apologize I don't have time to show you the ropes, but it is pretty simple. Follow along what they say with the script. If they forget a part, they're supposed to whisper line, but mostly they will just moon at you like a heifer. If they skip a page or two, don't worry, but let them know afterwards." She gestured with her lantern. "Keep your eye on Trestle, the boy who brought you here. He's playing Julius, and I have a bet with Lord Nonsuch that he won't get through a single act this year without making a mistake. Easy money." I love the Neanderthals, Frederick. I have a total like fascination with Neanderthals. It's nice to think of I don't know, different times, different sorts of people. Why are you all trying to brag about? No wonder you like Joelle so much. Are you talking to me, Sunny? What's not to adore about Joelle? Other than his grumpiness. Okay. "And what about Nonsuch?" Her sniff was one of pleasure. "Him? He is absolutely guaranteed to go off script. I think it's a point of principle with him, but that doesn't mean he needs prompting. Drying up is not that boy's problem." Alouette settled herself. A prompter and curtain up only a quarter-hour later. It must be my lucky day. She locked her eyes on Shay's and said, "Sharp eyes, blunt knives." Shay repeated it back, self-consciously. Conversations were snuffed out with the candles, and there was a weight to the darkness then, like the room had filled with oil. A wedge of scenery was wheeled onto stage before eyes got used to the dark. There was at last a delicious moment of calm before Alouette lit the lamp in front of them. There it was, the prow of a ship cresting and burrowing into waves. Aquamarine silk undulated across the floor. It was at once profoundly unrealistic and utterly beguiling. Alouette worked a bellows laid sideways with its spout angled towards the bow, and she sent up a glimmering spray of water. Shay caught the smell of deep sea with no land in sight. The ship curtsied to meet the waves, and when it rose again, Nonsuch was on deck with his hands on his hips. He was Cleopatra, bird-eyed and horse-maned. Black silk that captured ripples of sea light, and gold at his ankles and wrists. Gold that was too plain for jewelry, but too rich for shackles. He turned a degree so that the light split his face in two. The first line, according to Shay's script, was, "The waves know my fate, and Caesar's too." But he continued to stare out in silence. There was a reverie to it. The creak of wood and the smell of salt. The candlelight and hushed breaths. Shay tugged at Alouette's hem. "Should I?" But Alouette shook her head. "Our hearts are ships." He didn't say it the way she was used to hearing players talk. Rather, he threw the line to the front row of the audience, quietly enough that they had to lean in a little closer. Our hearts are ships, he said again, and when life's weather is fair, we tell ourselves that we are our heart's captains. It is us who steer the course. We set sail for new lands. We explore. He flung his arms wide and turned so that he was almost entirely in darkness. There was the tiniest glint of light from his eyes. Alouette dimmed the lantern until he was little more than a voice and a gleam of gold. But that is an illusion. When true storms come, they pluck the ships of our heart up and toss them this way and that. We are no captains. Instead, we hang on for dear life, clinging to the mast as the winds rage around us. He blew out his cheeks against the squall of the spray. His hair was damp and flustered. Our hearts are ships, he said louder now as Alouette worked the bellows. And tonight the tempest is here. The storm is upon us, and my heart is lost on a killing sea. And Whitey's on the moon. A rat done bit my sister Nell with Whitey on the moon. Her legs and arms began to swell, and Whitey's on the moon. I can't pay no doctor bill, but Whitey's on the moon. 10 years now I'll be paying still. Well, Whitey's on the moon. Okay, let's get back to this. I was listening to Pieces of a Man by Gil Scott-Heron the other day. It's like one of my favorite albums. It's beautiful, like really. I think I even like did a stream years ago where I played it, and while I was doing some art, it was fun. But I think it got, copyrighted. So sad. Okay. He blew out his cheeks against the squall of the spray. His hair was damp and flustered. Oh, wait, no, I just read that. Shay looked in vain at her script. Not a word of the speech appeared there. None such stood taller, extended a hand, and blew. Tiny paper boats, as small as thistledown, streamed from his palm. And all over the theater, hands reached up into the light, and then, in one moment, Alouette killed the lanterns, and a curtain fell. Well, I suppose that was scene one, she said. The play unfolded with a dreamlike imprecision. None such the center of every scene. Cleopatra came to Rome to plead for her country, truffling for power. 1 minute he rolled untouched from a carpet to land propped on an elbow. The next he flattered Rome like a courtier. Caesar's part was taken by a brute of a boy, 6 foot tall and wide as a door, whose toga rode up while his laurel crown bulged at his temples. No matter, he was pure foil. None such worked in and out of his shadows with a voice half for himself and half for the audience. He flitted between the sexes. Sometimes in the space of a sentence, his body lied and cajoled, flattered and fretted, and Shay found herself tangled up in him. When his words tumbled like rainwater, her heart rose with his. When he dropped to his knees, it was Shay's gut that clenched. She missed her first prompt. In the middle of a long speech, Trussell simply stopped. Shay had been watching 4 gentlemen who sat in chairs set on the edge of the stage, close enough to the action to reach out and touch the actors. Indeed, in the middle of a knife fight, one had pulled out his rapier and offered to help Trussell out, a suggestion which won a smattering of weary laughter from the main seats. 2 of the gentlemen were engaged in a game of dice, and Shay was distracted until Alouette elbowed her in the ribs. By the time she found her place, another actor had taken over the speech. She checked the script and found out the cast had missed out a chunk. She cursed herself. Alouette's expression was unreadable in the dark, but Shay was sure that she'd moved away from her. She had other chances, though. In a long soliloquy, a soldier stopped for a moment and bit his lip. She whispered his line to him, and he went on without pause for the rest of the speech. The next scene was riddled with corrections in her text, and 3 times the actors lost their way. Each time she nudged them back. Near the end of the act, Nonsuch went out among the audience. He trailed fingers over bare shoulders as he walked. He whispered something into a gentleman's ear that won a blush, and he sat in his lap. And he sat in laps, sorry. He looked so fragile among the heft and luxury of the nobleman that when the interval came, Shay found she'd been holding her breath. She was damp with sweat. The black-clad boys of the chorus slipped onto the stage, and the musicians started up over their heads. Fiddle, lute, and hand drum stepped around one another until a loose volley of trumpet notes sounded out. Tiptoeing across the bridge of sound, it was the Moor from backstage, standing among his sitting comrades, sending forth curling breakers of frothy, bubbling notes. Shay asked, "Is Nonsuch really high-born? I can't place him at all." Alouette turned the lantern onto her. It was blindingly bright. She scowled and then relaxed. "That is what they say. He's certainly as lazy as a gentleman, and he does have a taste for the finer things, but I've never heard him talk about his past." She considered the question again. There are whispers that he was taken from a very wealthy family. There was a Nonsuch palace in Ewell, a Nonsuch hall. It was a name made of stone and glass. Surely a family of means would have the power to get him back. The owner, this Evans, he can't be untouchable. Alouette worked as she talked. Evans has the Queen's ear. More importantly, he has the Queen's warrant. Who knows what happened? Many people fell out of favor. Maybe this was a warning. Still, I've never seen Nonsuch with kinfolk, so it could all be nonsense. Don't ask him. Shay nodded and then felt the heat as Alouette turned the lantern back towards her. Seriously, don't ask. They have so little, these boys. The Moor's trumpet stepped down through a scale to land breathless on the hush, and Alouette dimmed her lantern. This here is his family now. The second act began with a long speech from Nonsuch. There was a weight to his words that she'd not noticed earlier. His voice was a blade returning to a sheath, a pigeon coming home to roost, and his power was doubled, trebled even by Alouette's lighting. Her lanterns were mirrored and directional, throwing beams of light that always caught Nonsuch's face. She could dim and brighten, flattening his features or throwing him into the shadows. She played with the light the way Nonsuch played with words, and the two of them warped the very air to their bidding. At one point, with Cleopatra alone on a storm-tossed hillside, Alouette slid a sheet of cracked tin in front of the lantern, dropped a grayish lump of something behind it, and, as the scene reached its crescendo, lit it. There was a blinding flash and a throat-tearing pall of smoke in the box. But on stage, the effect was unmistakable. Lightning splitting in the backdrop from ceiling to the boards and fixing Cleopatra's agony in an eye blink of white light. Alouette's face was taut until there was a chorus of gasps and then a round of applause so loud that Nonsuch had to halt his speech. Shay was so caught up in the action that it was only when she turned over a page and saw the next was blank that she realized the play was over. Even if she'd been up on stage, Shay didn't think she could be more drained. She sat winded as Alouette tidied, and the chatter of the crowd drained away behind them. She loaded up a clever wooden box with drawers that folded out like a fan, containing wicks as thick as fingers and others as delicate as thread. A drawer lined in lead was packed with twists of paper that smelled of gunpowder. The tin stencils slid into a series of slots, and she read out the names as she replaced them. Dawn, storm, dusk, battle, hell. Once the last stencil had gone back into the box, Alouette turned to Shay. So, how was it? I loved it. It was true. She was thick with the weight of the drama, drunk on it. I'm so sorry that I missed that first cue. Alouette nodded. You have to let them hang at least once, otherwise they wouldn't bother learning the lines at all. She had an accent that Shay didn't recognize, rounded but hard, like river stones. Where are you from? She said something in a language that Shay didn't understand, and then, Flanders, near Ghent. Shay didn't know much about Flanders, except Anna Cleves and marsh warblers, neither of which seemed likely topics of conversation. She tried another tack. What brought you to London? What brings anyone here? Work. Certainly not the food. Am I reading this nice story so that you can all pick on each other in the chat? My goodness. Shay sensed that Alouette was torn between talking and appearing overeager and remaining silent. She found that she wanted this girl to like her, and she wanted to be invited back. The lantern and the tricks, are they your own work? All mine. My family are clockmakers. It's in my blood. And they should be the only start. If Evans had any foresight, I would turn this theater into a palace of wonders. The auditorium was nearly empty. There were scraps of conversation and the swish of a brush somewhere behind them. Shay asked, What wonders? Alouette didn't miss a beat. A bonfire that doesn't char, a sea that stretches for leagues, forests of crystal, Atlantis rising from the waves. Each phrase set images coursing across Shay's mind, and she let them play as Alouette finished up. She worked in silence, but when she was done, she said, Would you like to go down to the dorm and say goodbye? The boys should at least thank you. The room had the smell of musk and sweat and penny scent. Shay sat on the edge of a bed and marveled at how the boys could throw off a performance like that. Lads who minutes earlier had been plump-lipped Egyptian handmaidens now tussled over toys and playing cards. Boys did boy things in boy ways, rough with each other, careless. Everything too small for them, like plants outgrowing their pots. Most lay on grubby cots with rectangles of dust underneath. While one boy read theatrically out loud, he stumbled over a couple of words, and a boy threw balled up hose at him. Junk collected in the corners of the room. A drum with a broken skin, clothes in piles, wooden swords, and at the far end a ladder led up to a curtained-off bunk. Alouette called up, Saint Nonsuch, are you coming down off your cross? A hand slipped out from between the curtains and raised 2 fingers. Alouette was unoffended. I'll come up there with my rag and vinegar then. Y'all, stop. Nonsuch poked his head out, bringing with a cloud of smoke. He raised a hand. Wait. He levered himself onto the ladder. He was wearing the costume from the performance, and his hair was still powder dark. He wiped off most of the paint, but there were crusts of purple and red in his face's corners, behind his ear, in his eyebrows, where his nostrils met his cheek. How was I? Alouette laughed. I've seen better. You have to step forward for more for the scene. Otherwise, the rain looks too thick. Nonsuch waved away the criticism and fixed Shay with a quizzical smile. It was magical. She was still blindsided. Thank you. You were pretty good yourself. Might we persuade you to visit us again? Tomorrow even? I think I can get Evans to stretch to tuppence a performance. Tuppence. That was more than she got for her afternoon's messages. She pretended to think about it, even though she would have happily come back for free. Nonsuch kicked at a table. Anyway, here's the lad who should be thanking you, seeing as you saved his bony arse. Trussell was drawing quickly. His right hand drummed on the table while the left worked steadily on a sketch taking shape. A naked woman lying on a couch with her right arm thrown backwards and her head turned away. Her hair was down and pearls accentuated her nudity. Shay thought it might be the horror who she'd seen in the audience. There were drawings tacked up nearly every bunk, and they all looked like his work. There were girls and ladies in swan-like, sinuous poses. Giant bears fought with dogs and wolves. A bull tossed a gentleman on its horns. The smaller boys had more innocent work, sleeping dogs in rural cottages, mothers and fathers. And one boy had a heart-rending mixture of flashy nudes and huge-eyed kittens. Trussell finished with a flourish, looked up, and realized they'd been talking to him. His blush was instant and comprehensive. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, thank you, Shay. She took the drawing from him. I'm just one of the boys, she told herself. It's beautiful, she said. Is it the woman in the box earlier? Yes, I didn't get a proper look. He was embarrassed, she thought. You can keep it, she had to offer. What do I owe you? Nothing. You saved me out there with your prompting. Thank you. Alouette laughed, but a gleam came over him. Oh, actually, there is something you could do. You're a flapper, right? He blushed again. Sorry. An avisculton. Avisculton. Avisculton? Is that... I'm not familiar with the word flapper. I'm missing Zenny's story. I'm sorry. I'm reading my own story. Did you know there are ruins in the British Isles that are massive? And, you know, Stonehenge is not even the pinnacle of what they had. And it's one of the more modern in terms of the Stone Age. It's one of the more recent, or what's the word I'm looking for? It's one of the more late constructions that they did in stone. Frederick. All over Ireland, they have tons of Stone Age ruins. Not to mention, like the Orkney Isles, they've excavated quite a few of them, but most of them are buried in peat. I watched a documentary where they had a guy go in, and he was basically digging through the peat and putting up these, or he was digging these like metal rods into the peat. And once they hit stone, you know, it would clank. And he basically mapped out, by doing this process over the years, this entire like massive Stone Age city, village. I don't know what to call it. It's just like incredible, but it's all buried under the peat. That too. No, but Stonehenge is the most famous. We get it, Fred. We get it. There's mounds as well. There's like the burial mounds. Those predate the pyramids in Egypt as well. Like a lot of the, what were they called? Cairns, the stone cairns where they buried people. I mean, it's amazing to think like all over the world there's these incredible like stone constructions, and that they had entire civilizations just built of stone. I mean, we still have buildings built of stone now, but to think of it like that it was lost. Anyway, there was no internet back then. Ugh, what would we be doing? How's y'all little business doing? I'm just saying, Fred, they had the stone burial mounds thousands of years in the British Isles before the pyramids were ever constructed. Now, I think, you know, what the Egyptians were doing is they were overcompensating. Like they were jealous that they got to the game late. And so they were like, you know what? We're going to build the biggest, craziest thing here. You know what I'm saying? And stun on them because that's, because they were black. So that's what they had to do. They had to like be flashy. They couldn't have some little thing. They worked at it a few times. They made these different kind of step pyramids and such. The little mounds, getting them more and more triangular or like square. And then, eventually they perfected it. Anyway. Terry getting caught up in the Hawaii thing. It's funny. It's funny to me. Don't encourage Fred and Terry. Everyone knows why he built them. I don't know that for sure. I don't think that's necessarily the case. And I mean, Egypt had so many different rulers and like so many different kinds of pyramids that were built. I mean, if you're talking about like the Great Pyramids at Giza, yeah, I don't know. Those people would have been, I don't know. Who was running at the time? I'd have to look it up. It's been a while. But if you look at like other African civilizations, like the Nubians, for example, they had these small pyramid constructions that are really fascinating. But we don't know anything about them because they didn't have like a written language. Let me see if I can pull that up. I kind of haven't looked at it in a while. There we go. These are fascinating. Little detour from our story. I want to share the Nubian pyramids. And it was blacks that built these. So I don't think it's that odd to think that in a later civilization like Egypt, that they would be building pyramids. Aw, camel. And I wonder, like, what's under the sand too, because like I mentioned in Ireland, the stone cities that they had, but like, time has weathered these places too, and you just wonder, like, what's all underneath there, like how much is buried that we don't even know about. But anyway, that's enough. They're pretty cool. I like how they're like more isosceles triangles and T-ways. Sunny, what the heck are you writing? What the heck are you writing? Anyways. He's writing a movie screenplay. Well, I'm glad we can facilitate all of it. Let's get back to this. I'm going to get through this chapter and I think get myself off to bed. Okay. Shay's heart dropped. She didn't know what he'd given her. Shay's heart dropped. She didn't know what had given her away. The borrowed cap was still pulled over her horns of hair, so he must have caught a glimpse of the sparrows tattooed on her inner wrists. Uselessly, she tugged down her sleeves. Now would come the questions. Did she really worship birds? Could she speak with magpies? Could she fly? She wiped the worry from her expressions and said, "Yes, I am." Trussell's nose twitched. There was something rabbity about him. "And you have the fortune cards?" Everyone knew that flappers meant fortune-telling, and everyone thought that fortune-telling meant the cards. Shay could read them well enough, but if need be, but they were childish things compared with the real mysteries. But she was a guest. "Of course," she said, checking her pockets for her cards. "Think of a question that consumes you." Even the ritual words tasted musty. "No, sorry, I don't want a reading." He looked around the room. The clamor, the dust. "I'm not sure I want to know my future at the moment. But I would love to see the drawings on the cards." She handed them over, and Trussell fanned them out and picked through them, making involuntary guttural noises at ones that he liked. "This is," he isolated a card that showed an empty carriage pulled by slavering dogs, speeding through the night. "It's so beautiful. Who painted them?" She had never thought of the cards having a creator. They'd always been part of her life. "I'm not sure. Sorry. They've been around my home for years. I have more sets. Would you like to keep them?" "I couldn't." Still, he had both hands in the pile now, turning cards at random. His eyes were hungry across their surface, and Shay felt an immediate need to make him happy. They have so little. "What if I were to keep them here then with you? You'd be doing me a favor." "Oh, it would be so kind." Even as he spoke, he couldn't take his eyes from the cards, and his gaze flickered across them, flames on paper. He turned over 3 in quick succession and and reflexively read them. Shay read them. 5 of cups, 5 of wands, 3 of swords, jealousy, strife, loss. Yeah, 5 of cups, 5 of wands, and 3 of swords. Bad time. Bad time. Dang. Bad times. Look at this book. It's got me. Are we going to be getting into this? Y'all are so racist. I can't with you. Hi, Harmony. How you doing? Afterwards, outside again, the cold had come down hard. Shay and Alouette stood under the eaves where girls still waited, ratty in the drizzle. Drivers brought carriages around, rattling across the cobbles, and a stream of men leapt onto running boards and called out destinations: dicing houses, taverns, bowling alleys. Alouette had picked up more boxes on the way out, and she was unsteady under their weight. "That was kind, back there with Trestle," she said. "They will be his prized possession. I know, you don't really need them." Shay shook her head. Their toy. Usually she left any mention of her home life at the city gates, but Alouette, with her explosions and powders and lightning at her fingertips, made her feel ordinary. Real fortunes can only be told out in the wild, among the birds. She gestured eastwards. Alouette would love birdland, Shay was sure. The temple her people had built there to house and worship birds was as spectacular as anything conjured on the Blackfriars stage. She looked around them. There was a gleam of rain on carriage lacquer and the smell of perfume. Brass door handles and musicians playing exit music. Money everywhere. She would be late home, but tuppence in her pocket would soften her father's anger. She kept her voice light. "So do I get paid?" Alouette's minute eyebrow raise was a sign, thought Shay. She was well off enough that talk of getting paid was vulgar. She pulled her collar higher. "Yes, of course, I suppose. Speak with Forster tomorrow and he'll sort you out." "I think none such," said Tuppence. She looked ready to leave, but something in Shay's voice must have caught on her, or maybe she noticed the thinness of Shay's shirt against the chill. "I could pay you myself and sort out the details tomorrow." Shay's hand was out, wet with rain. "In a moment." All right, so that was the first 3 chapters of the Ghost Theater. Interesting enough, a bit cheesy in some ways, I would say. Especially, I don't know, the cast of characters that's unfolding just seem a bit much. And of course, the fact that our main character, Shay, is this androgynous pagan fortune teller. I don't know. I'm finding it all very interesting. I Oh my goodness. I swear the Duolingo owl is giving me guff. I piped into there briefly, recently, opened up the Duolingo, and then this damn owl has not given me any rest since then. And he's emailing me too. Ugh. I know. Why does there have to be a race war in my chat? Come on. God, you guys know I don't like this kind of thing. You all know that I'm sensitive. You all know I wasn't raised that way. Can't handle it. I can't handle when white people are too. Oh, look, there's a young one's memory. Another young one's memory. Oh, my kitty. Oh, dear. Interesting. You almost bought the same shirt I'm wearing? Girl, buy it. What's stopping you? Buy it. It's cute. Although, you know what? I thought it would be it's a bit of a crop top, though, I have to say. It's a bit shorter than I expected it to be. So you have to make sure you're wearing a high waist or like you have something to cover it. Like my shorts I wore today are high waisted, but I did notice when I went out that a bit of my back was exposed. Luckily, like I can cover it up mostly, but like if I was adjusting or moving around, just saying it's nice. It's, it covers everything, but it's still a crop kind of shirt. Is Court going to bed? Good night, Court. Y'all are so bad. Ugh. Have any of you served your countries? Either at home or abroad? Am I all right, Court? Thank you, Court. Yeah, you have a good night. I know, Frederick, they're just making fun of you. Thank a vet. I bet Fred can cook, though. I laid my life for my country. Oh, my. I served many broads for my country. Thank you for your service, Court. It's none of your business what he did in the military. Goodness. Do Canadian veterans get high-grade weed? God. Really? Is it legal everywhere in Canada? I don't know. Like, I'm thinking when I was in Canada last, or the last couple of times I was in Canada, I did have a little bit of that. But it was, I don't know. I feel like it was not exactly legal. It was like medicinal, but like everybody and their mama had a medical reason to smoke it. So I don't know. Dispensary on every corner in Toronto. Dang. Okay. Trudeau claims that we are possible homegrown terrorists. Really? He said that about like the military members, service members. It's not really any of my business why anyone gets or how other people make their money or who pays who or whatever. It's not my business. Lord, I can't with you, Yoda. You just be making the silliest things up. Oh my goodness. Anyway, again. Hi. Hi, you. You finishing your din? You're so cute. Look at you. Look at you eating that food. My hungry boy. So good, kitty. He was hungry. We've had 5 veterans who've been offered euthanasia by our own VA. For what? What, because they have like, what, PTSD or something? You love Mana. Is that all you need to do to get a crazy check? I know some people that get crazy checks, or I've met them at least. They get crazy checks, but they didn't serve their country. They didn't serve in the military. They're just crazy. Like they were too crazy to even like, you know, do anything like that. One of the 5 was asking for wheelchair ramps. Oh my God, don't bring up the wheelchair ramps. It's a sore subject for me. They're trying to take away my ADA. And like I said, there's several businesses in my area even that I would like to go into, but I physically can't. And it's kind of, I mean, it sucks, you know. There's like a antique jewelry store that opened up. There's also a like small independent publisher that carries different like, you know, magazines and looks like comics and other things that I'd like to see. And then I even had a date a few months back where we were going to go to this new Italian place, and I couldn't get in. So we ended up having to go to an Indian restaurant nearby, which was fine, but I did want to try that place, and it's just unfortunate, you know. It's like they don't get my money. These places that could be getting my money don't get my money because I can't get in. Oh well, they don't have any ramps at all. Like there's nothing. It's unfortunate. What can you do? You know, but by and large, I do pretty well. My life is pretty good. And I love that I live in this modern time and era where I get to, you know, have all of this open up to me thanks to the efforts of the previous generations who came before me. Galahad is asking if I think Harmony likes him and is trying to make him jealous. I don't think Harmony likes you at all, just from what I've seen. But we haven't talked privately about it, you know. It's none of your business. Fred's financial situation is none of y'all's business. Mind your business. There are so many, like, more just, I mean, I don't even know what to say. Don't tell me to shut up. You're in my chat. I just think, you know, there's so many, like, that is a very, I've never heard that term before. Wow. No, don't say that, Fred. We don't want Kamala to be president. She's going to be a disaster. Are you serious? It's time to answer to the white man. That's funny. Look at this. That's too bad, Point Fire. Generations, 3 generations. White woman defending the Kamala voting black. I don't know what he's voting. Maybe we can convince him otherwise. Don't vote for Kamala. You're in California. Vote for RFK. It'll be fine. You can keep your dignity. You don't have to vote for either of the 2 parties. You can keep your independence there. You know what I mean? Galahad is so weird. It's like he's laughing in everything he posts. It's so weird. Vote Trump or die. Calm down, Zenny. You are so dramatic. Why is Zenny so dramatic? He's like, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if Kamala wins? I'm like, I'll be fine. I'll be okay. I'm just going to keep living my life. Going to work, doing my things. I don't think it's really going to affect me because, I don't really think she's going to be the one running things anyway. And if Trump does get into office, don't think that that's going to be perfect because he's going to have so many people against him trying to sabotage everything he does. Come on. If you thought being unvaxxed in Canada was bad, just wait. Do you think she's going to roll out the mandatory vaxes? I don't want to get vaxxed. I don't want the monkeypox vax or whatever they're trying to push. What was I going to do? I was going to go into the chat. That's right. Pulling up my phone. I pulled it up earlier to do that, and then I got distracted. Don't you love that when you pull up your phone and then distract yourself with it? UK journalist Sarah Wilkinson under house arrest on terrorism charges. Wow, that sucks. Okay. She was abducted, interrogated, and tortured by anti-terrorism police who are now preventing her from using any electronic devices. Interesting. I'm going to save that.
No, this is Crispin.
Crispin Flintoff. Okay. Give that a save for sure. Okay, where's my channel? Easy to get distracted. Okay. Kamala said X needs to be shut down. Good night, Court. Your bed is under the porch. Sounds like you're going to get eaten alive by mosquitoes. Our baby Yoda got timed out for 600 seconds. Lol. I didn't even notice that. What was he saying? Oh my God, that's funny. He did tell me to shut up. Yeah. He's fear mongering and breeding hate. I'm not even on X. I don't know. I don't have much of a opinion about it, although I seriously don't think that that's a good idea to get rid of X, obviously. But yeah, I know. I mean, they're not really arbiters of freedom and that kind of thing. Galahad, Harmony got a wrench. So you better watch what you say to her because she could take you out. Talk about pot meat kettle. Dang, are you talking about me? I don't even know. I'm like looking at both chats. Why am I doing that when I'm going to get all of the comments here? But I'm sucked into my phone looking at it. Dang, Zenny. Zenny going hard on the blacks tonight. Dang. I'll throw down the hammer. Yeah, you be careful. Told you this free modding is going to end badly. It's fine. Yoda has a backup account where he's modded. And if anybody does something I don't like, I can always take away their moddership. It's no big deal. Galahad, look at poor Galahad. He wants that wrench so bad. But he knows I can't mod him. I just can't do it. I can't do it, Galahad. You know what you've done. You know what you've said. Sarian says you guys should get a life. Hello, Sarian. Good to see you. It's nice that Michael Sarian comes in to see time and time again. We were talking about the ancient stone runes in Ireland. Do you know anything about those that you can share? Irish Repub says, you're unhinged, bro. And I'm not sure if that's to Fred, Zenny, or Galahad. And then Galahad says, I am righteous. Oh my. Oh my. You do? Cool. Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely interesting. Yeah, what should you get? Undateable or unwrenchable? Axe. Yep, you got him. Look, Yoda got him. Galahad says, haha, you see I made you laugh. I am funny. Gotta do my laps all night, Terry. I'll be back if you're still on. No, I need to go, actually. I'm not going to be on again tonight. I'm wrapping it up shortly. But thanks for showing up. It's nice to see you. Oh, yeah. I'm sure there's a lack of pretty women on the internet to look at. That's cool. You swim though, Harmony. I'm thinking about getting into it right now. Been looking at different places. I'm not sure though what I'm going to join exactly. Like, there's a place near me, but the pool is kind of small. And there's another one that I might have to like travel a little bit to, but it's going to be bigger. I don't know. Yeah. That's tough though. Like, what happened? There used to be like pretty women on the internet. Like, what happened? Carrie says she's tired and gotta go. That's a 1 hour warning. Y'all need to suck me in. I'm not feeling too sucked in. Send pics of what? Yeah, I'm sure I'll find something good. Hi, Jeff. Lesbians happened. Well, some of them are pretty too. I don't know. Although a lot of them have like, you know, really crazy hair and facial piercings and whatnot, you know. I mean, I have friends who have facial piercings, so no judgment there. And I had my nostril pierced, so although I feel like that was like tame compared to what people are doing nowadays. I'm not, no, and definitely not. Frederick, there's no way, no effing way am I going to let my husband have another wife. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not a weird cultist. I think it's completely wrong and bad for society. In no way in hell. Not to mention my insane rage and jealousy that's going to come out. I don't need to be going to prison for killing my husband and my sister wife. That's just not going to happen. I'm just not going to put myself in that situation. Oh my God. Shut up, Yoda. That isn't even true. Don't look at it as my wife. Look at it as your girlfriend. Frederick, you're insane. That is the most ghetto thing I've ever heard. Are you kidding me? What are you? Are you like Onision? Do I look like the kind of woman that would do any of that? I'm not the kind of woman that would do any of that. Come on. That's gross. That's so gross. Like, I know people are into that. I know tons of people are into that, but it's not me. I would rather be like single than deal with that. That's just like degrading to me. And why would I call myself somebody's, like, what would even be the point of being married if we're acting that way? I don't get it. Like, what would be the purpose of being married if it's going to be that? I don't understand. Zenny is saying, stop encouraging Terry to be gay, you degenerate libtard. Yeah, okay, Galahad. Hi, CJ. It's not typical. No, Yoda, there's plenty of, I've seen plenty of white people engaging in similar behavior. I mentioned Onision, but there's so many guys who are like, or married couples that are like poly, and it's not for me. It grosses me out. Some girls enjoy the competition. Why would I ever compete over you? Why would I compete over a man? Like, why? And my husband, this is insane. My husband, not just like a man that I'm interested in, my husband. I'm not going to be competing for my husband. Like, what? It's insane. Y'all, I can't. I've seen Sister Wives. I know how it ends. I'm not interested. Some guys just got it. Well, some gals just got it too, Galahad. How about that? Some women have it, so I guess, I know what I have, so I'm not interested in that kind of behavior or mess or degrading. Just no. Hell no. It's ungodly. Okay? It's ungodly. It's unsophisticated. It's degenerate. It does not lead to anything good. Polygamy is in the Bible. Yeah, so is a lot of things. We live in the modern era. Polygamy is very negative overall. I'm not interested. I can't even believe we're discussing this. We discuss this way more than I would like to. Hell no. What else is there to say? Hell no. Did I miss a question from you, Fred? I don't really want to discuss this further. Is it about polygamy? What do I think about a man having sex with a drunk girl? I mean, it really depends on the context. Like, how drunk is she? How drunk is he? Like, how well do they know each other? Like, I think it depends. Like, that conversation was really dependent on some factors. There are times when I think that, someone who is intoxicated can't consent. And there are other times where I think, while their inhibitions may be down, that it's a gray area, or it's not like rape. I think if a man forces himself on a woman in any way, regardless of what her state is, that's rape. Or if he cons her into some sort of situation, which I think is pretty common in these circumstances, which is why it is kind of why the laws have been set up the way they have. Because these are often scenarios where men are kind of luring women who are drunk and, not really thinking very clearly. Then I've also mentioned in the chat when it was being discussed, or maybe it was before that was even being discussed, but I've had a friend let at least one, I don't know about any others, maybe others have had this happen, but I have one friend who's told me about the fact that she's been roofied like multiple times. But she still goes to these kind of parties and drinks alcohol. Like, so I don't know. I mean, if a woman's like, I think sometimes, like I said, it's a complicated matter. It's not really black or white. You know what I mean? She didn't date Bill Cosby. No, but I don't know. She just, she was part of this kind of like scene, I guess. And she didn't want to like, I guess she felt it would impact her socially, if she stopped going to these events and that kind of thing. Or, this is common with like hipster types. I don't know. But for me, I don't really enjoy parties or crowds of people very much. I mean, I'll go to events, but I don't like to be at events where people are drinking or taking drugs either. So I can't believe you modded this guy. Well, if I didn't mod him, people would be coming for him. So I had to protect him. It is from the devil, I think, and it's really, if you have any children in the mix, I think it's criminal. It really is criminal. This is why women can't be leaders. Shut up, Zenny. Worry about your own evil. Worry about your own evil. Oh, God. Please don't, can you keep it PG-13? I've asked you repeatedly, Yoda. Keep it PG-13. Why are you giving him an eggplant like that? And then you gave poor Hake a chili pepper earlier when you were discussing him. Like, really? That's better. Relations is a much nicer word. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's completely insane. It's very devilish. There's got to be the woman. There has to be something wrong with her. Like, honestly, to get herself in that kind of situation. That's not how you spell Jorge. If a guy tried doing that to a woman and saying he withdrew consent and accused her of rape because he was intoxicated, we'd all look at the guy like he's stupid and not take him seriously. Well, I mean, it's different, isn't it? Like, the act is different for males and females. Although there was that episode of Peep Show where Mark got raped by Natalie. He woke up and she was like on top of him, and he asked her to stop and then she didn't. And then he told like Jez and Superhands about it. And they were like, "It sounds like you were raped, Mark." And he was like, "No, I wasn't raped. Nothing went up my bum." And they were like, "Well, nobody said it was bum rape." And it's like, it's this cringy, humorous thing. It's not the same act because of the physicality being different between the two sexes. So there is a level of absurdity to it. But at the same time, like, yeah. You like Mandy, the caller from JLP. I don't remember Mandy. Did I see the terrible story on Nick's stream? No, I didn't. Oh my God. Yoda's getting real serious right now. Mandy had a nice voice. I'm not remembering Mandy right now. I'm sorry, guys. What was her call about? Picking up girls is called the Venusian arts, and Venus is Ishtar. Yes, it's another name for her. You're taking up for me. I thank God I have Yoda here to take care of me. Thank you that you're here taking up for me, Yoda. Thank you. Oh, yeah, Zenny. Okay, I did hear that story. I missed the first part of it. But I did come in as it was like, as he was talking about it. That's a good point too, Sarian. Venus and Ishtar are separate entities from two different cultures. I mean, that is true. Yeah, I wouldn't, yeah, you're right about that. I don't like to conflate the two. I mean, they do get conflated for various reasons, but well, Venus is not Greek. Venus is Roman. Aphrodite is the Greek. I mean, yeah, the gods do repeat in different cultures, and a lot of it's tied into the planets as well. Like there's planets that are associated, or they saw the planets as representations or even embodiments of their gods. So, like Venus, the planet Venus, is associated with Aphrodite. And, you know, they have different cultures have different pantheons based on these gods that all have very similar traits. You feel for Mandy. She put her husband on the phone. But yeah, that was a horrible story. Like, I mean, what to think about that? I'm not surprised something like that happened. I'm amazed that like it happened more than once or twice. Like, just to get back to what Zenny was talking about, the call that was on Nick, or not the call, but the story that Nick covered. She is trying to control him, giving ultimatums. Who is trying to control who? F that. Are you talking about Mandy? How was she trying to control her husband? What was happening? I don't remember this at all. I don't remember a woman calling and then putting her husband on. What's the deal? She should have chilled. No, I thought I liked your call into Nick today. It was not only was it entertaining, like the two of you sparring off about it, I thought you did say some interesting things. And I like how you kind of sometimes take those stances because, I mean, the reality is whether, you know, a man thinks, you know, that in his mind, in his heart or whatever, that he didn't rape someone. Like, legally, if a woman is intoxicated, like, the consent is considered void, and if she wanted to, she could press charges. I mean, that's the reality that you're living in, legally speaking, in many places. So be very mindful about how you conduct yourself. So, like, regardless of what you think, is quote unquote real rape or not, this is what the law is. Act accordingly. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's not a good idea. Sometimes, yeah, I agree with that too. Putting that energy out there is kind of like, it's unwise. And yeah, I mean, it's like, it's just not a good idea. Like, don't be hooking up with people like that you don't know when they're drunk, or even people that you do know when they're drunk like that. It's not a good idea, especially if it's like your first time getting with someone. I mean, but people are going to do stupid things and do what they want to do. Most of the time, like, most of the time though, like when situations like this occur, even if the woman is regretful, she's not going to press charges. Usually when a woman does press charges, it's because, like, he had forced himself on her in some way, or he, like, had done things to her that she didn't consent to in the act. Because just because you consent to, like, do one thing with someone doesn't mean you consent to have them do a bunch of other things to you. And a lot of these people out here are crazy and degenerate and doing all kinds of sick things. So, like, it's just not a good idea. It's just not a good idea. Yeah, I do find men drinking to be pretty. I mean, I don't care if it's like occasionally, like, but men who drink regularly are just not anyone you want to be around. It's not a good energy to be around. The other thing about it is too, like, I've never met a guy like that who wasn't a total mama's boy, who wasn't trying to make you into his god and mother. Like, I've never met a guy who had a drinking issue that wasn't like that. So let's see. I'm trying to, like, so back to Mandy. It was a good example of the false emotional love that JLP references. Let's see. She called Jesse trying to tell on her husband, but it backfired. She wanted the mother-in-law out of the house, so it was a 1 versus 1 basically. Her mother-in-law didn't live with them. I don't know. I'm trying to think about this. Yes, drunk women are horrible too. Mana is a woman, Galahad. What are you talking about? So Mandy wanted to move her mother, or she didn't want her mother-in-law to move in with them. He was considering moving his mother in with them, and she didn't want him to move his mother in with them. That's tough. That's a tough one. What day was this? When was this on? I don't know. I think you might, Yoda. He's like very picky. I don't know, Yoda. You give kind of like, I don't know. You're very S wordual. You come across as very S wordual. You got that Jezebel spirit. Um, yeah, it's tough. Like, I don't know. Moving your mother in law in with you sounds like hell. Pecker. Pecker. No, she was just really involved in the marriage and she had the passwords to her grandkids' phones. What? That would bother me. It would. I mean, you're not. Once you get married, you're supposed to like leave your family to a certain degree. Like you shouldn't be dependent on them in that way. Once you marry, in my view, like not that the like parents on either side can't assist you as family. Especially once you do have kids. In a grandparently role or just as someone for help or advice or even companionship, but like a lot of people ruin their marriages because their parents are involved. Like they do, they let their mothers, a lot of women let their mothers ruin their marriages, especially women who come from broken families anyway. Like all the women in their family will be divorced or like single or never married, and they'll keep those like really close ties to those women, um, and they'll put those relationships before their husband, and those women don't want to see you winning, they don't want to see your marriage succeed. Not like they want you to fail, but they can't comprehend what you're going through or what it takes to actually make a marriage work, you know, which is, putting that person first. What are you saying, Galahad? I've been trying to teach the guys how to do it, but they reject me like they reject Christ. It is insane. They don't want to be like Christ. They don't want to learn to get girls. They just love their hell for real. What guys are you talking about? Honey, are you married? Are you in any position to be dispensing advice about getting women if you're not married yourself? Jesse told them to get divorced. He's always trying to get people to get divorced. He's crazy. Yoda, that was mean. Wait, Mandy's called in a few times, hasn't she? Mandy has called in a few times, hasn't she, about this situation with the mother-in-law. Am I right? It's that woman? Because I remember a woman calling in a couple of times about like she's frustrated with her husband because he leans so much on his mother-in-law and she's like so involved. And like Mandy kind of wants to have more control over him. I mean, it's just sad to me. It's really a sad situation. Her husband was calling her a liar on the phone. Lord, I missed this. What day was it? I can't believe I missed this. Galahad, if you're not married, you don't know what it takes to have a successful relationship with a woman. Like, don't be giving advice out here to like men about how to get women or something. Like, come on, you need to figure it out yourself. It sounds like you're still figuring it out. That's crazy. Okay, so it was yesterday. I know. I can't believe I can't believe that. Who would have thought that Yoda would have turned nasty? You've only watched him do it to everybody else. Now he's doing it to you. You've had serious relationships, Galahad. Galahad, what does that mean? Like for years. So you've wasted women's time for years, is what you're telling me. What this guy is saying is that he is willing to waste a woman's time for years. He's willing to waste years of a woman's fertility. He's willing to take years of your youth and beauty from you and leave you with nothing. And he's out here trying to tell guys how to get girls. Are you kidding me? Hi, baby. Hi, baby. Hi. You're so good. You're so good. Look at you. I'm quite sure they enjoyed those years. I'm sure they look back and have real regrets about wasting their time with you, actually, Galahad. Like, honestly. Like, I'm just saying this as a woman who knows other women and, you know, knows many women who've been in situations like this with guys, and they hate those guys. They may be pleasant, they may be cordial, you may break up nicely, but at the end of the day, they look back and they hate you. Okay? Honestly. Because, you know, women don't like to have their time wasted. And like, what are you doing? Like, this is what, like, come on. You come in here, you're so crazy. I can't even deal with you. Like, it's so, like, insane. It really is. Yoda, you're disgusting. Keep it PG-13. PG-13. Look at you. You're so cute. Did you get to go outside? You had a fun day. You went outside, didn't you? You got on that balcony. I didn't even pester you none. You had a good day, huh? That was a good day. You had fun. Oh, you're so cute. You need a little brush though, don't you? I never broke their hearts or anything. You don't need to break their hearts. You just need to waste a woman's time. The only serious relationship that exists is marriage. Everything else is a joke. There's no such thing as having a boyfriend or a girlfriend. That isn't serious. Okay? If it ain't marriage, it ain't serious. You're single until you're married. All right? Legally speaking, you're single until you're married. So don't talk about a serious relationship. It doesn't exist outside of that. Everything else is playing house. You know, you're playing house with someone, you're fornicating, or your boyfriend and girlfriend. It's not real. You baby. It's not fair. You're so cute. You want me to get off of here? Am I being annoyed? I'm annoyed with Galahad. He ticked me off. He ticked me off since day one. And he's still ticking me off. And now he's comparing himself to George Clooney. Lord have mercy. You're so cute. Look at them little eyes. Did we show video of you when you were a baby yesterday? Everybody thought you were so cute. You were so cute. You were so tiny. You're so tiny. You were so tiny. Wasn't he tiny? Wasn't he tiny? He was so tiny. I can't believe how tiny he was. He had that little tiny head. And despite being that tiny, he still managed to, destroy the vents in my house, tear up the vents, break tons of plates and cups. What else did you do? You broke a lot of things, didn't you? You were so naughty. You were so naughty, weren't you? You were a bad kitty, weren't you? Were you a bad kitty when you was little? You were doing all kinds of crazy things. You're still kind of crazy sometimes. But you've been tempered out quite a bit, too. A little fluff on your nose. What's that? A little fluff on your nose, sweetie pie. He was so cute. Wasn't he cute? God, he was cute. And he's still cute. To this day. To this day. Cutest thing I ever did see. Makes cute little sounds too. Ain't nobody is cute with the little cute cries he makes. God, he just so cute. All right, sweetie. You're so cute. Well, I've had enough hate, blame, and victimhood, judgment, and seeing the evil in others tonight. I'm sure Matt Osman is like, what the heck? Why is she putting this on with my book? Like, how is this going to go over? I'm sorry, Matt. You know, we'll be back again to read more from this book. I'm enjoying it. It's nice to read a novel. It's different. I get to be more dramatic with it. So I'm enjoying that. Okay, baby, get off me. Come on. Come on, Sugar Belle. Get off of your human. Come on. Come on. I'm going to be getting up. Come on. Okay. Yeah, I love you too. So yeah, thanks for being here, y'all. I'll see you again soon. Back with more reading. Yeah. Till we meet again. Hearts, hearts, hearts. I can't believe Mina and Yoda are fighting. It's horrible. It's upsetting. I don't know what to do about it, honestly. I'm kind of like in a state of shock and disturbance. Thank you. Sweet dreams. Oh, you love me. Now you love me. Where my ring at then? Good night.